My son was my whole world until he betrayed me in a way I never imagined. He took my home, my savings, my dignity, all for the woman who wanted me gone. But this is not just a story of loss. It's a journey through regret, strength, and the hardest kind of love. Stay with me, and you'll see how even a broken heart can find peace. My dear one, your feedback means so much to me. Please let me know where you're watching from and whether you enjoy this story. It's truly, truly important to me. Thank you so much. I sit on the narrow bed in the corner of the shelter's room, the thin blanket pulled up to my chest even though the room is warm. Outside the small window, the city moves on without me. Cars rushing by, people with places to go, lives to live, and here I am. 72 years old with nothing but a small suitcase of worn clothes and the memories that haunt me every night. My name is Etta May. I was once a mother who believed that love, fierce, protective, overwhelming love, was enough to shape a good man. I believed that my sacrifices, my sleepless nights, my endless giving would be repaid in kindness, in gratitude, in respect. I was wrong. My son Marcus was my pride, my purpose. From the moment he was born, I lived for him. His father left when Marcus was only a baby, unable to handle the weight of responsibility, the endless crying, the demands of a new life. I didn't mind. I told myself I didn't need anyone but my boy. I worked 3 jobs at times, cleaning houses, waiting the tables, sewing late into the night, anything to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table, and I watched over him like a hawk. Every step he took, every friend he made, every choice he considered, I was there, guiding, advising, warning. But Marcus never smiled at me the way I dreamed he would. There was always a distance in his eyes, even as a child. I told myself it was just his way, that one day he would understand all I had done for him. One day he would thank me. That day never came. I remember his school years like they happened yesterday. I was at every meeting, every event. I packed his lunches, laid out his clothes, checked his homework, or did it for him if he left it too late. I thought I was helping. I thought I was building him up. But Marcus grew resentful. He pulled away. When he brought friends over, he would roll his eyes at my questions, my hovering. I heard him once, through the thin walls of our apartment, telling a friend, "She treats me like I'm a child. I can't breathe." That night I cried myself to sleep, but the next day I only tried harder. I couldn't see that my love felt like chains to him. When he went to college, law school, I paid for what his scholarships didn't cover. I worked overtime, took out loans in my name. I told myself it was worth it. He would be grateful. He would come home one day and say, "Mama, you made me who I am." Instead, he met her, Julia. I didn't like her from the start. Pretty, polished, with a smile that never reached her eyes. She looked at me like I was a nuisance, an obstacle. And Marcus, my Marcus, he changed. He stopped calling as often. When I visited, he seemed distracted, irritated by my presence. I thought it was stress. I thought once he married Julia, once they settled, things would get better. But they didn't. They got worse. I remember his teenage years like they were yesterday. The tension between us grew with every passing day. The more I tried to protect him, the more he pulled away. I'd check his schoolwork, question his friends, demand to know where he was every minute. I thought I was saving him from the world's dangers. But in truth, I was pushing him into a prison he could not escape. Marcus excelled in school, not because he loved learning, but because he saw it as his ticket out. He was brilliant, determined, focused in a way that filled me with pride and fear at the same time. When he got into law school, I told everyone in the neighborhood, "My boy is going to be a lawyer," I'd say, my chest swelling with pride. But Marcus barely looked at me when I hugged him. His eyes were already looking ahead, past me, to the life he was building without me. When he met Sherry, I saw my nightmare come true. She was polished, ambitious, and cold beneath her charm. She saw me as nothing but an obstacle, the old mother who hovered too close. and Marcus let her drive the wedge deeper between us. At first, it was small things. They stopped visiting as often. Then the calls became rare. When they did come, Sherry's smile was tight, and Marcus seemed distracted, as if he couldn't wait for the visit to end. I tried to win her over. Gifts, kind words, offers to help. But she saw through me, and she didn't want me close. And then came the day that broke me. The day Marcus came to my door, his voice calm, rehearsed, as he told me I needed to sign some papers. "It's just to help manage your affairs, Mama. We want to make sure everything's in order as you get older," he said, not meeting my eyes. I signed, out of love, out of trust, out of foolish hope that maybe finally this was his way of caring for me. I remember the weight of the pen in my hand, the shaking of my fingers as I signed my name on those papers. I remember Marcus's quiet sigh, not of relief, but as if a burden he'd carried too long was finally lifted. Sherry stood behind him, her arms crossed, her face unreadable. I wanted to believe they meant well. I forced myself to believe it. But weeks later, I began to see the truth. The letters from the bank, the visits from officials, the notices on the door. My house, my home of 40 years, was no longer mine. My savings, the little I had scraped together through decades of sacrifice, were gone. Every cent transferred to accounts I didn't recognize. I tried to call Marcus, but his number changed. I went to his office, but the receptionist always said he was busy in meetings out of town. And Sherry? She made sure I was kept far away. The last time I saw them was the day they came with the court papers. Marcus didn't look at me as he explained that it was for the best, that they were arranging for me to be placed in a care facility. "A nice place, Mama. You'll be safe, cared for. This is what you need," he said, his voice flat as if he were reading from a script. And so here I am, in this shelter, because the care facility they promised was nothing more than a place to store the forgotten. I left. I walked until my legs gave out, until I found myself here. Now I sit in the silence, night after night, and think about the boy I tried to shape into a good man, the boy I tried to protect from the world, but instead turned into a man who saw me as a burden to cast aside. I ask myself, where did I go wrong? Was it the love that smothered him? The control I called protection? The dreams I forced onto him? I don't know. All I know is that I'm alone with nothing but these memories and the bitter taste of regret. Every night as I lie on this narrow cot, I replay the moments of my life like scenes from a film I can't turn off. I see Marcus as a baby, reaching for me with tiny hands. I see him on his first day of school, clutching his lunchbox, his eyes wide with uncertainty. I see him at his graduation, standing tall in his gown, his smile forced for the camera. And in all those moments, I see myself hovering too close, smoothing his hair when he didn't want me to, adjusting his tie when he had already done it himself, answering questions for him before he had the chance to speak. I called it love. I called it care. But was it control? Was it fear of losing him that made me grip so tight that he couldn't breathe? I think of the times I scolded him for choices that didn't fit the plan I had in my mind, the plan where he would always need me, where I would always be his guide. I never asked what he wanted. I told myself I was saving him from mistakes, but maybe I was stealing his right to be himself. The other women at the shelter sometimes sit with me, share their stories. Some lost everything to drugs, others to violence, some to bad luck. I listen, and I wonder if they see me as I see myself, as a woman who gave everything and ended up with nothing. Or maybe they see what I can't, that I gave everything in the wrong way. I don't hate Marcus. That's the hardest truth of all. I want to. I want to blame him. But deep down, I know that I played a part in shaping the man who could look at his mother and see not a person, but a problem to solve. Tonight, I'll sit by the window and watch the city lights. I'll think of Marcus, wherever he is. I'll wonder if he ever thinks of me. And I'll pray, not for him to come back, not for what's lost to be returned, but for peace, for him, for me. Days at the shelter follow a rhythm that feels both comforting and hollow. Breakfast at 7, chores assigned by 8, lunch at noon, lights out at 10. Each day blends into the next. The same faces, the same conversations, the same silent prayers whispered into the night. I wake before dawn most mornings, long before the others stir. I sit by the small window in our shared room, watching as the sky shifts from black to deep blue, then soft gets pink. The city hums to life outside. Car engines, sirens in the distance, voices rising with the sun. And I sit, thinking of Marcus. I wonder if he wakes early too, if he sits with his morning coffee in a kitchen that was once mine, in a house that held my memories. Does he think of me at all? Or has he pushed me from his mind, a chapter closed, a burden laid to rest? There are women here who have become my companions. Bernice, with her sharp tongue but kind heart. Gloria, who hums gospel songs under her breath when she thinks no one is listening. We share pieces of ourselves in the quiet moments. Not everything, never everything. Just enough to remind each other that we are still here, still human. But when the conversations die down and the room grows still, my mind returns to Marcus. I replay the last months before I lost everything. The small betrayals that should have warned me, the polite distance in his voice, the way he stopped looking me in the eye when he spoke. I think about the papers I signed, the trust I gave so freely because I could not imagine my son deceiving me. I think about Sherry's cold smile, her hand resting on Marcus's arm like a silent claim of victory. And I wonder, did they plan it from the beginning? Did they sit together in the house I built, counting the days until they could take it from me? Sometimes in the deepest part of night, I hear the other women breathing softly, lost in dreams or memories of their own, and I let my mind wander back to the life I once had. I remember the sound of the creaking floorboards in my house, the smell of bread baking in the oven, the sun streaming through the kitchen window onto Marcus's face as a boy. Those were the moments I lived for, the moments I thought would last forever. But somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing Marcus as a person separate from me. I saw him as my work, my proof that I had done something good in this world. I loved him, yes, but I also needed him to be the man I imagined, and not the man he wanted to be. The counselors here at the shelter sometimes talk about forgiveness. They say it's the key to peace. I nod when they speak, but inside I wonder, how do you forgive what you can't understand? How do you let go of a betrayal that came from the very person you gave everything to? I see Marcus in my dreams sometimes. In those dreams, he is still a little boy. He runs to me, arms outstretched, calling "Mama, Mama," and for a moment, I feel the warmth, the hope, the pure, unbroken love. But then I wake, and the cold of the shelter walls closes in around me. I wonder if he dreams of me. Does he see my face, hear my voice, or has he built walls so high that even in his sleep I cannot reach him? The shelter offers group meetings twice a week. We sit in a circle, and one by one we're invited to share our stories. Some talk about the streets, about addictions, about losing everything to things they can't even name. When it's my turn, I always hesitate. What can I say that won't sound like self-pity? That won't sound like a mother blaming her child when deep down I know I share the blame? I usually just say, my son didn't want me anymore. The women nod, because in this place, abandonment wears many faces. But in my heart, I know the truth is more complicated. Marcus didn't just stop wanting me. I smothered him until he saw no other way but to push me out. I made him into my entire world and left him no room to breathe, no space to become himself. The hardest nights are the quiet ones, when the city seems to pause, when no sirens wail and no voices rise up from the street. In that stillness, my memories speak loudest. I hear the sharp words I spoke to Marcus when he brought home ideas or dreams that didn't match mine. I see the disappointment in his young face when I dismissed his choices, his hopes. I wanted to make him strong. I wanted to make him safe, but I see now I wanted to make him mine. And here I am, in a place where no one calls me mama, where no one needs me, where I am just another woman with a story of loss. Sometimes I wonder what I would say to Marcus if I saw him now. If he walked through that shelter door, if he looked at me not with disdain, not with coldness, but with the eyes of the boy he once was. Would I ask him why? Would I beg him to take me home to undo what was done? Or would I simply tell him that I'm sorry for holding him so tightly that he felt he had to break free in the cruelest way he knew? I think of Sherry too. I wonder if she sees herself as the villain in my story, or if she thinks she saved Marcus from me. Maybe she did. Maybe they both believed they had no other choice. At the shelter, I find small comforts. The way Bernice brings me a cup of tea without asking. The way Gloria hums softly in the evenings, filling the silence with something gentle. These women, strangers who became companions, remind me that even in loss, connection is possible. But when the lights go out at night and the world grows quiet again, I'm left with my thoughts. And the hardest thought of all is this: I don't know if I would change what I did, even knowing where it led. Because every choice I made out of love, blind, fierce, desperate love. And maybe, in the end, that was my greatest failing. The days at the shelter began to blend together in a quiet, steady rhythm. There was comfort in that routine. Breakfast served with the same pale coffee and dry toast, chores that kept my hands busy, the predictable hush of the evening when the city outside slowed and darkened. But my mind never rested. Each morning I found myself drawn to the small cracked mirror above the sink in our room. I would stare at my reflection and search for traces of the woman I used to be, the mother who once stood tall with pride at her son's achievements. The woman who imagined growing old surrounded by family, by laughter, by gratitude. But all I saw was an aging face lined with worry, eyes dulled by too many sleepless nights, lips pressed thin from years of holding back the words I should have said and speaking the ones I shouldn't. I thought of Marcus often. I wondered how he explained me to others. Did he speak of me as a burden he was forced to carry for too long? Did he tell friends that he did what he had to do? That placing me here was an act of mercy? Or did he not speak of me at all? I remembered how, when he was a boy, I would stand at the window and watch him play, calling him in too early, warning him of imagined dangers. I told myself I was protecting him. But perhaps I was only protecting myself from the fear of losing him, from the fear that the world could take him from me in ways I couldn't control. And in trying so hard to keep him close, I drove him farther away. Some nights, I sit by the shelter's tiny window and watch the city lights flicker like distant stars. I wonder if Marcus looks out at the same sky from wherever he is. I wonder if he remembers the nights we spent on the porch, him curled beside me, listening as I told him stories meant to guide him, to shape him, to mold him into what I believed was right. But what did I really give him? I wrapped him in my hopes so tightly that he could not move, could not breathe. Every decision, every friendship, every dream he tried to have, I weighed it, judged it, shaped it until it fit my plan. And now I'm left with nothing but memories and regrets. Bernice often tells me, "Etta Mae, you did your best. That's all any mother can do." But I shake my head. My best wasn't good enough, or maybe it was too much. I see it now. I see how love, when it smothers, can become its own kind of cruelty. At the shelter, they offer counseling, group meetings, kind words. I listen, I nod, but inside I know that no words can change the past. No advice can rewrite what's been done. Sometimes I catch myself fantasizing that Marcus will walk through the shelter doors, his eyes filled with sorrow, with apology. He will say, "Mama, I was wrong. I see now what I've done." But deep down, I know that will never happen. And if it did, could I truly forgive, or would the pain be too deep, the wounds too raw? I don't know. And perhaps that is my punishment, to live with the questions, with the echoes of choices I can never take back. There's a small courtyard behind the shelter, just a patch of cracked concrete with a bench and a dying tree. I go there sometimes in the early morning before the others wake. I sit on that bench and listen to the city's hum, and I think about all the ways I tried to protect Marcus. I kept him from sleepovers because I worried what other children's families might expose him to. I made his lunches until he was almost grown because I didn't trust anyone else to nourish him. I helped him with his schoolwork long after he asked me not to. And when he wanted to move away for college, I begged him to stay. He stayed. And maybe that was the first betrayal, not his of me, but mine of him. I kept him close, but not out of trust or confidence, out of fear. Fear that without him I would be nothing. And now I sit in this shelter and I am forced to face that fear because it has come true. Sometimes in rare moments of peace, I allow myself to hope that Marcus has found happiness. That, without me hovering over him, he has become the man he was meant to be. But that hope is tangled in sorrow because if it is true, it means I was the one holding him back all along. I don't know what comes next for me. I don't know if there is a next. But each day I wake, I tell myself I will face it, one breath at a time. The shelter has a rhythm, and slowly I have learned to move with it. I wake before dawn, as always, and sit by the window watching the sky shift from black to gray, then pale gold. I eat my breakfast quietly, sweep the floors, fold the donated clothes, anything to keep my hands busy, my mind quiet. The women here have become, if not friends, then companions on this strange road. We share small kindnesses, a cup of tea, a soft word, a listening ear when the weight of our stories becomes too much to bear alone. But even in this fragile peace, Marcus is never far from my thoughts. I see him everywhere, in the young man who volunteers on weekends, in the lawyer who comes to offer free advice to the women here, in the boy who helps stock the food pantry. And every time I see those faces, my heart aches with what was and what might have been. I think often about that last day, the day I left my home for the last time, the day Marcus stood in my doorway, papers in hand, his eyes cold, his voice steady. He said it was for my good, that I would be safe, cared for, but there was no warmth in his words, no love in his gaze, just duty or perhaps relief. And I remember the sound of the door closing behind me, the click of the lock as I walked away, the sound that told me I no longer belonged. There are moments when I let my mind wander to the life I thought I'd have by now, a small home, quiet afternoons on a porch, maybe watching grandchildren play in the yard. I pictured Marcus stopping by after work, bringing me groceries I didn't really need, asking about my health, making sure I was comfortable. I imagined family dinners, holidays filled with laughter, but those were my dreams, not his. And I see now how tightly I held on to them, so tightly that I didn't see they were choking the both of us. Here at the shelter, I am no one's mother. No one expects me to guide them, to scold them, to protect them. And in that, I found something I didn't expect. Space to think, to see myself clearly. I volunteer in the kitchen now. I wash dishes, chop vegetables, serve meals with a smile. It's small work, but it feels honest. There's no control in it, no expectation. Just the simple act of doing, of helping where I can. Sometimes when I lay down at night, I wonder what Marcus tells himself about me. Does he think I'm cared for? Does he believe he did the right thing, or does he never think of me at all? And if he did come, if he appeared at the door of this shelter, what would I say? Would I forgive him? Would I beg him to take me home? Or would I simply nod, recognizing the man he became, the man I shaped with my own hands for better or worse? There's a small garden behind the shelter, nothing like the one I kept at my old house, but it's something. A few patches of green, some flowers struggling toward the sun. I go there when I can. I kneel in the dirt, pull weeds, tend to what's left. The feel of soil on my hands reminds me of who I was, and maybe who I still am beneath all this loss. I think about how I tried to cultivate Marcus's life like I did my garden, pulling out what I thought were weeds, pruning what didn't fit my vision, planting seeds I chose, not him. And in doing so, I forgot that he was never mine to shape. He was always his own. The other women at the shelter sometimes ask about my son. I see it in their eyes, the question they don't voice. How did it come to this? And I don't have an answer, or rather I have too many. I loved too hard. I held too tight. I mistook control for care. And now I am learning, slowly, painfully, to let go. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in pinks and golds, I sat on that garden bench and whispered into the quiet, I hope you're happy, Marcus. I hope you found the life I couldn't give you. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the weight on my chest ease just a little. Each new day at the shelter feels like another step in a long, slow journey toward acceptance. Not forgiveness. I'm not sure I'm ready for that, but a kind of quiet understanding. I'm learning to see my story not just as one of betrayal and loss, but as a tale of mistakes made in love, of intentions that went astray. I spend more time in the garden now. There is peace in simple work, in pulling weeds, watering the few stubborn blooms, feeling the sun on my face. The garden does not judge me. It does not remind me of my failures. It simply accepts my hands, my care, and gives back what it can. Sometimes I sit on the bench and watch the street beyond the shelter's fence. I see young mothers passing by, holding their children's hands, their faces bright with hope, with plans for the future. I want to call out to them. I want to say, love them, yes, but let them be, let them fall, let them rise, let them find their way without your map. But I don't. I only watch, and I pray silently that they will do better than I did. At night, in the quiet of the shelter's dormitory, I think of Marcus. I think of the boy he was, eager, curious, full of dreams, and I think of how I tried to fit those dreams into the shape I'd chosen for him. I see now that love can wound as surely as hate, and that the hardest part of motherhood is knowing when to let go. The counselors here sometimes speak of second chances. They say it's never too late to change, to grow, to make peace with what was. I listen and I want to believe them, but I wonder, how do you find peace when your heart still aches for what is lost? I think of Marcus in quiet moments, and the sharp edges of my anger have begun to soften. I no longer picture him as the man who took everything from me. I remember the boy who brought me dandelions from the yard, who drew pictures of us together, smiling, and I wonder, was there a moment when I could have chosen differently? Could I have stepped back? Let him breathe, let him fail, let him become. Here in this shelter, I am no one's mother, no one's protector. And in that emptiness, I am learning something I never knew, that my worth was never meant to be measured in how tightly I held on. The other women noticed the change in me. Bernice said the other day, "You're smiling more, Etta May." I hadn't realized it, but I was. A small smile, perhaps, but real. I don't know what comes next. Maybe I'll find a place of my own one day. Maybe not. But for now, I tend the garden, I offer a kind word where I can, and I let the past rest a little more each day. And at night I whisper into the dark, I love you, Marcus, wherever you are. The seasons have changed since I first arrived at the shelter. I see it in the way the sunlight slants through the windows, in the crispness of the morning air, in the leaves that now blanket the small garden out back. And I feel it inside me too, the slow quiet shift from sorrow to something gentler. I am not the same woman who arrived here with nothing but a suitcase and a heart full of grief. I have learned to carry my losses with less bitterness, to let the memories rest without tearing me apart each time they rise. Tobias, the young man who volunteers at the shelter, often brings books for the women to read. He gave me a journal last week. Maybe you could write down your story, he said, smiling kindly. I hesitated at first. What would I write that could matter to anyone? But that night, I opened its blank pages and the words came. I wrote of Marcus, of the boy he was, the man he became, the choices I made, the mistakes I see so clearly now. I wrote of love, fierce, flawed, and consuming. I wrote of loss, not just of my home and my savings, but of the future I had imagined. And as I wrote, I felt something loosen inside me. The burden of all I had carried seemed a little lighter. Each day I find new ways to heal. I help in the garden. I sit with newcomers, listen to their stories, offer what comfort I can. I am no longer trying to control, to fix, to save. I am simply present, and that is enough. Some evenings, I sit on the back steps of the shelter and watch the sun set behind the city skyline. The sky burns with gold and rose and soft purple, and I think, beauty can still exist, even in the hardest places. Even in me, I no longer dream of Marcus coming back. That hope, once so sharp it cut into me, has softened into something quieter. I wish him well wherever he is. I pray that he has found peace, that he has built the life he wanted, the life I tried too hard to build for him. And in these moments of quiet, I find a kind of peace for myself, too. I see now that I cannot change the past, but I can choose how I live with it. I can choose kindness, even toward myself. The women at the shelter have become my family of sorts. We share our small joys, a new pair of shoes found at the donation center, a letter from a long-lost friend, a sunny day after too much rain. These small things matter more than I ever thought they could. One morning, as I tended to the garden, a young woman asked if I had children. I paused before answering, and then I said, yes, I have a son, and I loved him too much in all the wrong ways. She didn't judge me. She just nodded, and we worked in silence. That silence felt like understanding. There is a strength that comes from losing everything. It is not the strength I once imagined, the kind that fights and wins, that bends the world to its will. No, this is a quieter strength. The strength to rise each morning and greet the day, even when your heart is heavy. The strength to offer a smile, a kind word, a helping hand when you have nothing else left to give. I see that strength in the faces of the women here. In Bernice, who sings softly to herself while folding laundry. In Gloria, who shares her last piece of candy with a newcomer. In myself, when I sit in the garden and choose to plant hope where there was once only regret. Sometimes, when the world is still, I think of Marcus as a boy, standing barefoot in the yard, dandelions clutched in his small hand, his eyes bright with wonder. I think of the way he looked at me then, with trust, with love, and I let that memory warm me instead of tear me apart. Maybe that is the greatest lesson of all, that love, even when it goes wrong, even when it breaks us, still has the power to heal. As I close my eyes at night, I no longer pray for what I have lost. I pray for the strength to cherish what I have, this moment, this peace, this chance to be better than I was. And in that, I am free. Spring has come to the city. The garden at the shelter is alive with color. Tulips and daffodils pushing through the soil, determined, as if to remind us all that life insists on continuing, no matter the storms we have weathered. I sit on the bench beneath the blossoming tree and feel the sun on my face. I think of Marcus less now, not because I have stopped loving him, but because I have learned that loving him does not mean holding on so tightly that I cannot breathe. I have released him to his own life, wherever it may be, whatever shape it has taken. There is freedom in this letting go, a kind of peace I never imagined I would find. I've begun teaching some of the younger women at the shelter how to tend the garden, how to plant seeds, how to care for its fragile new growth. We laugh together sometimes, our hands covered in dirt, our hearts lighter for it. One evening, as the sky burned orange and gold, Bernice said to me, "You've got a light in you now, Etame. I see it." And I realized she was right. The weight I carried for so long has begun to lift, not because the past has changed, but because I have changed. At night, I still sit by the window sometimes, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. The shelter hums with the quiet breathing of the women inside, and for the first time in years, I feel a sense of belonging. Not because I am needed, not because I am in control, but simply because I am here, part of something larger than my sorrow. I think often of forgiveness. I used to believe forgiveness was something I could give Marcus or something I could beg him for, but I see now the forgiveness I needed most was my own. To forgive myself for the mistakes I made in love, for the ways I tried to shape him, for the hurt I caused without meaning to, and slowly, day by day, I'm learning how to do that. The other women notice it. I catch them watching me and I see understanding in their eyes. We all carry our regrets like old coats we can't quite bring ourselves to take off, but maybe, together, we are learning to lay them down. One morning, as I tended the garden, a small boy passed by with his mother. He stopped at the fence, watching me work. I smiled at him, and he smiled back, bright, open, without fear. And in that moment, I felt something inside me soften. The past is a part of me, but it does not have to be all of me. And so I rise each day, greet the sun, and choose to begin again.